Welcome back to my channel for a short Leica episode, and this episode will be about the new Leica D-Lux 8. This camera was just announced by Leica and market start will be on the 2nd of July. I have it already here thanks to my friends from the Leica store in Zurich who gave it to me to try it out and most importantly to have on my channel a comparison between the D-Lux 8 and the former D-Lux 7, which I have here in the special Bathing Apes version. And we'll also look over the fence and will clarify what this all has to do with the Leica Q3 and with the camera I don't have here, which was also just announced, namely the Panasonic Lumix S9. Let's kick this off. Alright, so what the heck is a D-Lux camera? Well, a D-Lux camera is a compact camera. You cannot remove the lens here, so it's firmly mounted with a variable focal range lens here. And we'll come to the specifications in a moment, although I should say the specifications of the new Leica D-Lux 8 are not completely clear to me because Leica has not published them yet, but I have a lot of data points I can share, of course. And typically Leica plays in the system camera market. So we talk about the M series where you have a camera body and many lenses you can choose to mount on that camera body. We have the S medium format camera system. We have the SL system. I posted already a bunch of videos on the new Leica SL3 on my channel. And sometimes Leica also likes to do compact cameras. And the D-Lux is one of these compact cameras. And of course the Leica Q3 is a compact full frame camera, although if you compare them side by side in terms of size, even if I would remove here the hand grip, this is a much bigger fellow here, of course. And compact cameras have charm and beauty by their own. And that's because this one here fits into the pocket of a coat in the same way as, for instance, the new Fuji X100 Mark VI, where I just posted a couple of videos on my channel. It's very lightweight, it's very compact, and it fits into your pocket. So you can take it wherever you want. If you are in street photography, these type of cameras here, they are actually good because they don't catch attention. You can take your photos, no one will even notice. Let's start to compare the new D-Lux 8 with the D-Lux 7. And it's worthwhile to note that when the D-Lux 7 came, it was a significant upgrade to its predecessor in terms of features. And there's a lot this camera is capable of. And if you have not watched my videos about this edition here or about another special limited edition, which is the 007 James Bond version of the D-Lux 7, I will post the video links down below in the info box so you can look them up. And the first thing to do is to look into the lens. And if we look into the lens, we see here, this is a Vario Sumilux, so it's an optical zoom lens, 10.9 to 34, widest open f1.7 to 2.8, depending on how much you zoom. And if you want to translate this into a full frame equivalent focal length range, this lens is actually from a field of view perspective equivalent to a 24 to 75 millimeter if you would see this from the field of view of a full frame sensor. So 24 to 75 is kind of a standard zoom range. Typical lenses in the system camera world go from 24 to 70. And here you have 24 to 75. And the lens in the D-Lux 7 is exactly the same as the one we have now in the new D-Lux 8. And we can check this here. It's the Vario Sumilux. f1.7 is widest open up to f2.8. That's if you zoom in. And if you go to the largest focal length here, 10.9 to 34, which translates, as I just said, into 24 to 75 millimeter for a full frame equivalent focal length range. So the lenses here, they are kind of the same. There are also certain features on the lens. So first of all, we have a beautiful aperture ring here. Here is, if you go into the setting where the camera sets the aperture automatic, that's typically shutter speed priority. Then we have 1.7. We can stop this down with beautiful clicks up to f16. And the same applies here to this new Leica D-Lux 8. We have here the aperture auto mode, so shutter speed priority, f1.7 is widest open, beautiful clicks in the same way as what we just saw on the D-Lux 7, stopping down all the way to f16. So the lenses here are kind of the same. We also have here a selector for the aspect ratio, so 3 to 2. Then we can switch to 16 to 9, 1:1, that's the square format, and 4 to 3. Beautiful, by the way. Listen to the clicks. The mechanical quality of these D-Lux cameras is without any question. Let's look into the same on the D-Lux 7. And first of all, looking at this from here, I have here a protector which I want to mention. So don't get irritated if these lenses do not look exactly the same if you look at them from the front side, because I have a Hoya protector here on it to protect my glass. And here we have the same switch. We have here 3:2, 16:9, 1:1 square format, and 4:3, and the same beautiful clicks. On the lenses on the D-Lux cameras, there's actually more going on. So looking at the D-Lux 7, we have here another switch or selector for autofocus, autofocus macro, if you want to do close-up shots, and manual focus. That's all mechanically selectable here. Quite nice. And again, beautiful build quality. Listen to the clicks. The same we have on the D-Lux 8. So here is autofocus, then we have autofocus macro, and then we have manual focus, the same beautiful clicks. So here again, mechanical elements to steer certain behavior of the camera directly via a switch or a selector on the lens. And by the way, there is a first analogy on the autofocus for close-up shots here, or macro, on the Leica Q3, because on the Leica Q3 we also have a macro selector on the lens. I just rotate this ring here, I get a different distance scale here, and then I'm in macro mode, and if I rotate back, I'm no longer in close-up shot mode and in the normal distance scale. And see how the scale is changing here. Very nice, and the same beautiful build quality what we have on the Leica Q3 here. Let's talk about the dimensions of the D-Lux 7 versus the D-Lux 8. And in order to get this fair, I need to remove the hand grip first, which I'm going to do here. So the hand grip is now removed, and if you now put them side by side here, you could come up with the idea that they are exactly the same. But in fact, the dimensions of the new D-Lux 8 are a little bit larger. So we talk about on the D-Lux 7, 118 times 66 times 64 millimeter. And on the D-Lux 8, we have every dimension a little bit larger, 120.2 millimeter, 69.2 millimeter, and 61.7 millimeter. So we have here some difference in the dimensions of the camera. And even if you look at the two cameras, you get the impression that the D-Lux 8 is a little bit larger. Let's look at the monitor or LCD screen of these two cameras. They look exactly the same. They are exactly the same from a size perspective. So both are 3-inch TFT LCD monitors, but the resolution on the D-Lux 7 here used to be, or is on that camera, 1.24 million dots, whereas here on the D-Lux 8, we have a significant upgrade to 1.84 million dots. So that is clearly an upgrade, which is noteworthy. Coming to the electronic viewfinder of the two cameras, the D-Lux 7 EVF looks outdated. Look at that. This is actually not a modern design. Whereas on the D-Lux 8, we have that flattish design of the Leica Q3. If you want to have a look here on the Q3, you see this is the same design. And that is a more modern appearance of an electronic viewfinder. But there is something interesting going on, because the resolution of this new EVF on the D-Lux 8 has actually a lower resolution than what you used to have on the D-Lux 7. And that's interesting because it's clearly a downgrade in terms of number of pixels you have. And nevertheless, I believe that the EVF in here is much better. And let's quickly come to the specs. So here on the D-Lux 7, we had 2.76 million dots on the viewfinder here on the EVF, whereas here now on the D-Lux 8, we only have 2.36. So we talk about 2.76 versus 2.36 million dots. But this was a normal LCD electronic viewfinder, and here we have now an OLED technology, which means you get a smoother representation of the scene in front of you, better if subjects move, and in general a more clear, better color representing image than what you had on the D-Lux 7. That's why I believe that this EVF, despite the fact that it has a lower resolution, is the better choice compared to what you have in the D-Lux 7. Staying for one more moment at the design of the camera, we see on the D-Lux 7 we have a lot of mechanical control buttons. We have 4 here, including a record button for 4K video. We have more buttons here. We have a control wheel. It also is a 4-directional control wheel. You can push this in 4 directions. The menu button is integrated here at the center. And that is something we don't have any longer on the D-Lux 8. This is minimalistic. It's actually looking like a Leica Q3. That's why I said at the beginning, let's clarify what the D-Lux 8 has to do. with the Leica Q3. If you look at that from the button perspective here, we have the LCD on the left-hand side, then we have on the right-hand side play, 4-directional control button and menu. And the same we have exactly here. It's minimalistic. This is today's Leica style. That's why some people on YouTube who presented this camera already call it the baby Q. It's almost like a mini version of the Leica Q. Currently the most recent one is the Leica Q3 and it's exactly the same design. Look at that analogy. Leica really played with design here and turned this camera into a baby Q. Even the two buttons here are exactly the same as we have them here. They are fully customizable and the design imitates what we see on the much more expensive and very cool, one of my most favorite cameras at all time, Leica Q3. The analogy between the new D-Lux 8 and the Leica Q3 continues in an amazing way if we look at the cameras from the top. Here are the microphones, here is the hot shoe, here's the shutter speed dial, beautifully designed. Here is the shutter release button. The on-off switch is around the shutter release button. That's the difference. We'll see in a moment on the D-Lux 8. Here is the control wheel, customizable. And in the center is another control button, also customizable. Exactly the same design, almost at least, we have on the baby Q. We have here the microphones. We have here the hot shoe. We have exactly the same shutter speed dial. Look at them side by side. It's exactly the same. I think even the size looks like it is the same. It's exactly recycled what you have on the Leica Q3 here for the D-Lux 8. We have here the shutter release button. By the way, you can use a cable release control here. That's quite nice. Big difference to what we had on the D-Lux 7. So with a cable remote release, you can release the shutter here. This control element around the shutter release button is used for zooming in and out. So we have here a W for wide angle, here a T for tele, and that is used so the on-off switch could not be integrated around the shutter release button, so it had to go separate here. But that's the only difference. It looks almost exactly the same. So what some people said in the last days is absolutely true. The D-Lux 8 by design is a baby Leica Q. Now, we already discussed the lens, and the lens is kind of the same specifications. As I said, here is a protector on top. Don't get irritated by the slightly different size. And now let's talk about the sensor. Now the sensor in both cameras is a micro four thirds sensor. And the specification sheet of the D-Lux 7 says it has a total pixel number of 21.77 million, whereas on the D-Lux 8 I found 21 megapixel. That's a tiny little difference. This lens here is anyway not covering the full micro four thirds sensor. So the effective pixel number you get is 17 megapixel on the D-Lux 7 as well as on the D-Lux 8. Something to quickly overlook is the sensor type. On the D-Lux 7 we have an MOS sensor, and MOS stands for metal oxide semiconductor, whereas on the D-Lux 8, if I saw the specifications correctly, we have a CMOS sensor, which means complementary metal oxide semiconductor. And that is a difference, of course, which is noteworthy. At the very end, the image quality of these two cameras will be kind of exactly the same. That's why I also don't think, after I posted a lot of pictures from this special edition and from this special edition D-Lux 7 on my channel, that I need to go into image quality. It will be the same, the lens is the same, the sensor is kind of about the same, and image quality will be pretty much comparable. Coming from the dimensions of the two cameras, where we just saw that the D-Lux 8 is a little bit larger, not much, but a little bit, the astonishing fact is that the weight of the D-Lux 8 nevertheless is a little lower. Because on the D-Lux 7 with battery we talk about 403 gram, and here on the D-Lux 8 we talk about 397 gram. And without the battery we talk here on the D-Lux 7 about 361 gram. And on the D-Lux 8 we talk about 357 grams. So although the D-Lux 8 is a bit larger in terms of dimensions, it is a bit more lightweight than what you have on the D-Lux 7. Will you note it when you shoot these cameras? Absolutely not. Besides the differences I pointed already out between these two cameras, what really makes a difference for me are the ports. If we look at the D-Lux 7 here, we have micro HDMI and we have micro USB. And micro USB is so outdated and so slow in terms of transfer rates, I have a hard time typically finding a cable if I want to charge this camera via cable and charger. Whereas finally on the D-Lux 8, we now have still micro HDMI. here on the left-hand side, but here we have now USB-C, and I guess I haven't seen the specifications in full as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, but I guess this is the fast standard and it will be hopefully USB-C 3.0. So we have high transfer rates, you can easily connect this with the Leica Photos app, and most importantly, you have always the right cable at hand because USB-C is now the standard for your iPad, for your iPhone, for your Samsung smartphones, for what have you, and you will always have the same cable standard. So that makes a big difference for me. Here when I wanted to charge this camera, which I did just before filming the video here, I had again spent about 10-15 minutes trying to find a micro USB cable because that's the port we have here on the D-Lux 7 compared to USB-C on the D-Lux 8. There are more tiny little upgrades here and there if you go from the D-Lux 7 to the D-Lux 8. One example I want to make here is, for instance, Bluetooth. Here on the D-Lux 7 we have Bluetooth version 4.2. Here on the D-Lux 8 it's Bluetooth version 5.0. Let's check the battery. Let's have a look. Let's get this out here. Let's see what we have. Let's do the same on the D-Lux 7. Open the battery compartment door. Let's get this out and let's see what we get here. So if we look at that, this is exactly the same battery. It's BP DC15E and the capacity is 1025 milliampere hours. So no upgrade on the battery. It's exactly the same. They can be interchangeably used on both cameras, same type, same capacity, same number of shots you get out of these two batteries. So here, no upgrade. And you know, a lot of people already mentioned in the web, is a bit disappointing that Leica didn't find it necessary to provide more upgrades in terms of sensor resolution, in-body image stabilization, what have you. When we come later to the Lumix S9, for instance, you find a lot of features which people would have had expected to see in a new upgrade of a D-Lux 7 after 6 years. But it is what it is. I nevertheless like the camera. We'll come to that at the end of the video. Let's now switch the camera on here and let's point out one more big similarity to the Leica Q3, namely the menu structure and the graphical design of the graphical user interface. And again, we will come to the conclusion that the D-Lux 8 is kind of a baby Leica Q3. I've now switched on the D-Lux 8 and we already saw that the design elements of control here at the rear side of the camera are exactly the same. And if I push the menu button, I end up in the status and control screen in the same way as I have it on the Leica Q3. Again, a perfect imitation. Look here, this is the Q3, this here is the D-Lux 8. And it continues. If I continue to push the menu button, I get the same menu structure, exactly the same familiar design and graphical user interface as what I have on the Leica Q3. Look here. This is exactly the same. And this is, in my opinion, fantastic because later at the end of the video, I will come to what group of people will very likely buy into this concept here. And that has a lot to do with the Leica Q3. It's totally different on the D-Lux 7 if I switch this on here. First of all, the menu button is located here in the middle of the control wheel. So if I push that, it's this old-fashioned, old-school menu and design graphical user interface we see completely changed in modern Leica cameras like the Leica Q3 and the Leica SL3. And that makes a big difference. And a lot of things, if you're familiar with the Leica Q3, you can shoot the D-Lux 8 immediately. There is no need to learn anything because everything you know from the Leica Q3 carries over to the D-Lux 8. Quite nice. I could talk for another extended period now in this video about specifications, but whatever you have in the D-Lux 7 is kind of also in the D-Lux 8. So for instance, video specifications, you can shoot up to 4K video here. We talked about the sensor already. Sensor resolution is about the same, and so on and so on. The features are about the same. It's a very similar, very natural, but also very gradual evolution we see here from the D-Lux 7 to the D-Lux 8. And now the big question at the end of the video is, what's the type of audience, the group of people who will buy into the concept of a D-Lux 8? And in order to do that, I have to involve another camera which I looked at in the last days, and that's the Panasonic Lumix S9. In the L-mount alliance of lenses, Panasonic, Sigma and Leica are kind of partners. And the D-Lux 7 has, of course, a counterpart in the compact variable zoom lens Panasonic lineup. And the same is typically true for all of these compact cameras. You find the same camera also from Panasonic, kind of the same camera. Of course, different color science and calibration, slightly different look and feel, different menu structure, Leica adapted and so on. But you find a Panasonic camera typically which is kind of the same as the Leica camera, just that the Leica is a bit more expensive and has a Leica look and feel. And you have a beautiful red dot logo on the front side of the camera. And for Leica lovers, this is something that counts, and they are willing to spend a little more money on that and not going for the Panasonic camera. But here, the new Lumix S9 from Panasonic now is a serious competitor of what's going on here. And let me start with price first before I come a little bit to the specifications. So the D-Lux 8, if you look it up at B&H, they are currently at pre-order, comes in at around about $1,600. For this, you get a Micro Four Thirds sensor and you get a zoom lens as we saw before. Full frame equivalent focal length range is 24 to 75 millimeter. The Lumix S9 comes at the price tag for the camera body only of about $1,500. So about $100 cheaper than this compact camera here. Is a system camera. Dimensions are very, very similar. This is a very compact small camera and you can mount all kinds of L-mount lenses to that camera. Of course, also very compact lenses which make the setup quite comparable. And the Lumix S9 comes in a body-only version and in a standard zoom kit version, and is a very attractive offer from Panasonic because the S9 features a full frame sensor and a much more powerful battery and an electronic shutter concept only. Of course, people have to check if there are rolling shutter effects, and if you don't have a mechanical shutter, then moving subjects will be a problem. But it also comes with a hybrid autofocus system. So there is face detection implemented plus contrast autofocus. Dimensions, as I said, are about the same. The weight is about the same. And the Lumix S9 has in-body image stabilization, 5-axis, and dual image stabilization with up to 6.5 stops, where the image stabilization in a compatible lens is combined with the in-body image stabilization of the camera body. And of course, in the specifications, also much more spec'd out, like high resolution 4K and 6K video, very fast autofocus, focus tracking, LUTs you can upload for video profiles, and so on and so on. And that all for the camera body only, $100 less. And some of these Panasonic lenses, in particular if they are compact, they are not super expensive. So you get much more value with a full frame sensor compared to a Micro Four Thirds sensor from this new Panasonic Lumix S9. And that will clearly attract also a lot of people. So for what type of people is then the D-Lux 8? I think it's for people who are already familiar with the Leica Q3 and the Leica SL3, who want a compact camera suitable to be stored in the pocket of a coat or of a jacket, and which you can take out, take a quick shot, maybe for social media, and then let it vanish again in your pocket. It's kind of a second spare camera which you carry in addition to a Leica Q3 or Leica SL3, and you are sick and tired of always changing your workflow and the way you operate the camera, because here you truly get a baby Leica Q3, as I said already in the video. It's the same menu structure, it's the same workflow, it's integrated in the Leica universe, it is compatible and works now pretty fast with the Leica Photos app, and it is much smaller than everything else you get in the Leica universe. So as a spare second camera, if you're on travel, if you work in social media, if you are in creative arts, that's a good value proposition. It's for Leica lovers. It's for people who are not so price sensitive and say, I rather spend a couple of $100 more and have a Leica look and feel than ending up in the Panasonic universe. Is it smart to think that way? Not so sure, but it is what a lot of people will go for. I'm quite sure about that already now. If you liked that video, don't forget to drop me a thumbs up. Stay tuned on my channel. There's always more to come. Thanks for watching. Stay safe and healthy. And of course, peace out.